People often balk at the thought of God punishing people eternally for not giving their lives to Him while they were alive here on earth. The assumption is that most of us have not done anything much worse than telling a few lies, and that it is unimaginable cruelty on the part of God to inflict so much punishment on anyone other than a few Hitlers or Stalins throughout history. Now, I personally don't think that God does punish anyone eternally, but that is another issue. In this video, I hope to give a better understanding as to why it is that so many of us deserve some kind of fairly harsh punishment for the way that we live our lives. In particular, I've recently been moved by a revelation of just how unbelievably evil we as humans are. It is only further evidence of our evil that we are so adept at hiding it from ourselves and from those around us, often for our entire life. In fact, that may be the worst evil of all, our ability to deceive ourselves about just how low we can go. In 1961, Adolf Eichmann, the architect of Hitler's so-called final solution for the Jews in Europe, was finally captured by Jewish Nazi hunters and put on trial in Jerusalem. Hannah Arendt, a Jew herself and a renowned political philosopher, covered the trial for the New Yorker magazine. Her conclusion was that Eichmann was, in many ways, just one more bureaucrat doing his job to the best of his ability. His problem, according to Arendt, was just that he lacked the ability to think. Oh, he thought about things like, I will do this or I will do that, but he never allowed himself to think about the morality or the long-term effects of what he was doing, or of what others were experiencing as a result of his decisions. Hannah Arendt made famous the phrase, the banality of evil, as she compared what Eichmann did in his job as government bureaucrat with what many Jewish leaders themselves did in Germany, where they too turned a blind eye to what was happening to fellow Jews, so long as they could be more comfortable themselves. Evil, according to Hannah Arendt, was not some red-faced, fire-breathing monster, but it was indifference in the hearts of otherwise respectable people all over the world. And that, I believe, is how God sees each of us. We do not need to each be forced through circumstances to make the kind of historical decisions that Adolf Eichmann, or indeed Hitler himself, made in their daily routines, for God to know we would be as certain to choose selfishly, based on much smaller decisions that we have already made and that we are continuing to make from day to day. That is the banality of evil. It is just ordinary people making ordinary decisions without thought for others, for the environment, for the future, for God. And we make those decisions over and over again based on what is most convenient. If we put up with an inconvenience at all, it is usually for the sake of achieving some more long-term comfort for ourselves and for our families. What looks like an insignificant error in the placement of a brick down here, over time, and in the right circumstances, will lead to catastrophe somewhere up here. God does not need to let us live through all the circumstances to know that we would be an Eichmann or a Hitler. Why allow more suffering for millions just to convince us of our own evilness? If we suppress our consciences in such small things now, He knows what we would do with much harder decisions, where the consequences for ourselves would be much greater. We have, in fact, already revealed ourselves as being desperately and dangerously evil, but we have buried it under a cloak of righteousness, including religious self-righteousness. I have struggled for the past 2 years with this whole issue of COVID and the world's ability to close our eyes against what is being called inconvenient truths. The extent of self-deception that exists in the world has poured out in a pandemic of insanely evil proportions. I keep telling myself that there must be sincere people among all those who are still preaching that COVID is a hoax or that vaccines are a conspiracy to wipe out the world's population. Nevertheless, whether through delusion or paranoia, the world is being exposed as being widely populated by madmen, and exceptions barely exist. The ability to deceive ourselves does not stop there. On the other side, you have people who are suffering from the same sort of self-denial with regard to the millions of babies who are being torn to pieces by abortionists, as governments go so far as to prosecute doctors who refuse to perform the murders because they have a conscience about such things. At the moment, abortion activists like Joe Biden continue to enjoy a certain level of respectability by comparison to the likes of people like Kenneth Copeland and Paula White. But over time, I believe there will be a far worse revelation of the awful, awful evil that lurks in the hearts of mankind. And it will come just as easily from the political left as from the political right. You see, the problem on both sides is that they have left truth out. Oh, they may speak loud and long about having some kind of lesser truths, but the bigger truth is that the heart of man is deceitfully wicked, like the Bible says, and that includes those of us who are preaching such things. You, me, we both have as much potential for evil as the worst people who have ever appeared on this planet. All it takes to reveal that evil is just simple encounters with truth that start to cost us something. In particular, I think that Jesus Christ has gathered up all of the criteria for a genuine hunger for truth and laid them on his followers to keep us forever uncomfortable. You want an illustration of denial and deception? The teachings of Jesus provoke the most universal and powerful form of deception in history. People cover their eyes, stick their fingers in their ears, fill their lives with distractions, and run in terror from everything that Jesus ever said. And when we do that, when we run from the truth as he has spoken it, we reveal ourselves for the outright Satanists that we really are. Jesus did not pull punches. When his most prominent disciple Peter suggested to Jesus that there was an easier way than a torturous death on the cross, Jesus answered him as though Peter was Satan himself. "Get behind me, Satan," he shouted at the one whom he had earlier said was the rock on which he would build his church. But that brings us to the good part. God can do great things when he finds people who are willing to address the evil that lurks in all of us. Peter repented of his cowardice and eventually was crucified himself. What could be more uncomfortable, more inconvenient than a slow, agonizing death while literally nailed to crossbeams? Jesus calls on genuine truth seekers everywhere to take up their crosses and follow him. Adolf Eichmann did not want to confront his own fear of death, and so he went along with all that his Führer said. He even made suggestions for improving the efficiency of the extermination of the Jews, suggestions that probably ensured a little more comfort for himself and for his family in a very dangerous world. Now, let's talk about something a little more up to date than the 1940s. Over in Africa, there is a tiny country called French Equatorial Guinea. They have discovered oil. So much oil that within 10 years, they could be the richest country in the world per capita, richer even than the Arab states. But one man, a dictator named Obiang, is putting almost all of the money for that oil into dozens of personal bank accounts around the world, many of them with balances in the hundreds of millions of dollars, while people in his own country struggle in abject poverty. If anyone disagrees with Obiang, they are put in jail, tortured, and executed. He is called by some the most evil man in the world today. But listen to this 60 Minutes interview with the American oil executive who deals with Obiang, and you will see just how easy it is to become an Adolf Eichmann in today's world.
Do you have any qualms about doing business there? It's a matter of you have to.
I mean, is there any depth to which you will not sink? I mean, would you do business with this man Obiang no matter how corrupt he is?
I think that at some point, again, that's a good question. Is there any level at which any oil company in the world wouldn't do business with where there's that much oil? I don't know. Your position is that we shouldn't be taking oil from Equatorial Guinea.
No, sir, no.
It is that position because there's no other choice.
Well, let me tell you my position. So my position is there should be some morality in this, and there should be a level below which you won't sink. And you've sunk to unbelievable depths in dealing with such a corrupt and cruel dictator as Obiang.
Well, I don't agree with it.
What, the cruel bit or the corrupt bit?
No, I don't. I don't agree that American companies are not following the Fair Trade Practices Act.
You and I, we are not oil executives. We are not heads of state. We rarely make decisions that will cost the lives of anyone. Or so we think. But we know about gross injustices all over the world thanks to the modern media. We are more aware of atrocities than were the average Germans during World War II. But what do we do about it? I don't have the answers to everyone else's problems, and I doubt that you do either. But Jesus does, and he says that the answer starts with a few individuals declaring war on the root of all evil. You see, that root of all evil is what keeps each of us from doing what is needed to change the world. That root of all evil turns each of us into a Hitler, an Eichmann, or an American oil executive in the ordinary business of daily life. Over and over, we choose what is comfortable and we close our ears to what is not comfortable. It is the ordinariness of evil that causes even our best friends to walk away if our truth becomes too uncomfortable for them. And Jesus has promised us that the whole world will walk away if we truly align ourselves with him and all that he taught. He said, if they have rejected me, they will reject you. Apart from my wife and one daughter, I do not have a single relative in the entire world who dares to even have a serious 5-minute conversation with me about the teachings of Jesus. They have all walked away. But I've grown accustomed to that. Let's look closer at you who are watching this video right now. How many of you are able to open up about your own reactions to the teachings of Jesus? How many of you even give a damn about the teachings of Jesus? I won't even try to guess why you come here, but it's rarely because you want to obey Jesus and be with others who are obeying him. If that was the case, we would be doing that now. Exchanging emails, visiting each other, forsaking all, and traveling together in all the world to preach the gospel. I fear that for most of you, this is just one more source of your so-called research on what is wrong with the rest of the world, and not a source of genuine fellowship based around a fervent desire to know the truth. The teachings of Jesus, they could be as simple as, do not address any man on earth as Father. And you would immediately react against it. Why? Well, because there are some men on earth that it would be uncomfortable to address by their first name. It is far more convenient to keep calling them Dad or something similar, maybe Sir or Doctor or even Pope. When we do that, way down here at the bottom of the pile, one brick shifts a little bit off balance. And the error is magnified with each new decision. If you cannot obey Jesus in even the smallest thing, do you really think that you would face torture and execution without denying him? Most of us will never even come close to facing execution because we will have turned our back on the truth long before that time. We may not become an Adolf Eichmann, but we will be dutifully emptying his wastebasket or selling him bread, or painting his home. And along the way, we'll be mumbling about witnessing on the job, or providing for our families, or about anyone who doesn't work is worse than an infidel. All of the excuses, from tent makers to God's grace, are just part of the silent conspiracy that causes evil to flourish. And those are just the churchy excuses. There are even more in other walks of life. In a few years, we're going to see evil incarnate rip off its mask. We are moving quickly toward a world government that is even now torturing hundreds of thousands of its own people and literally ripping organs from their bodies without the use of anesthetics to be sold to Western transplant tourists. Nice, respectable people from countries like America and Australia will be able to live many years longer because a monster in China expresses his hatred for political dissidents in that way. But he has only been able to do it because a population numbering in billions has shut their mouths for fear of meeting the same fate. And it's not going to be limited to China. If you think the mass hysteria of lies that have come out of the American right over the past few years is shocking, wait until you see what awaits us from the other side of the world. We are all going to become complicit, if we are not already, just through our silence, if nothing else. I started this video by saying that people often balk at talk of God punishing people eternally for such innocent things as telling a few lies. Yet those few lies and a lot of other relatively understandable things that we do to maintain our comforts are what make up the most horrible evils that could ever be imagined. It is only the grace of God that has held us back from manifesting all that evil up until now. But we are reaching the end stages of human civilization, when God will let us see just how terribly evil the human race is without Him. After much, very careful thought and prayer, we have come to the conclusion that the only real way to prepare for what is coming is to start following Jesus, the Christ, the voice of our Creator, now. Stop arguing with everything He has said and start falling on the rock of His teachings. He said, "If you walk in my teachings, then you are real Christians. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Believe it and do it. Amen.